Yes.
Did you get that computer-generated sound?
Oh, hell yeah. Recording is in progress.
Okay, so welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Talkin Twats podcast with myself, Richie, and, well, the other guy, he's talking absolute sense. I think you're that way, actually, because it's mirrored on my screen, but it's the one, the only, Matthew Conover. How are we doing, Matt?
I'm doing great, and I'm glad you pointed the right way this week. I watched the podcast back last time, and I was like, for God's sake, Rich, I'm not over there. Yeah, I'm doing good, bro. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. We've had a good race this week. We've had plenty of drama. I mean, it's just shaping up to be a fantastic season these last few years. And yeah, I mean, every race is just delivering absolute heaps of drama. So plenty to talk through this week, Matt. And just to cap it off, let's start by giving the race a score, maybe. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate the race and the circuit in general?
Boy, the circuit, just looking at the circuit to drive, I reckon over one lap, it's probably up there, like a 9 out of 10. It looks so fast and so rewarding to drive. The race itself, it was a good race. I think better than expected. There was more overtaking than expected, which was a nice surprise. It was good. I wouldn't say it's as good as like a Hungary or a Baku, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. What about yourself?
7 out of 10. All right, we'll go with two scores here. Let's give the track a score as well, Matt. What would you give it? So the race, you go with a 7. What would you go for the circuit as a whole?
The track, a 9 out of 10.
Oh, 9 out of 10. Okay, so that's a good one. So yeah, real driver's circuit, more of a quality circuit, like you were saying. Like, it doesn't deliver the best racing, but in terms of pure exhilaration, the drivers were really saying how enjoyable it was to be out there. The amount of energy going through the car, you had to hang on to that car for dear life, and quite similar to Magello in certain aspects. A lot of medium to high speed and a lot of energy going through the car. We saw it in free practice. A lot of component failures, the tyres really giving up the go. We'll get into that a bit later. But I'll go for a race. I'll go more around a 6. I think a few cars out of position for obvious reasons as well. A lot of unknown. We didn't have the data going into this one. So I think that helped with the initial race. I think if we went back there year on year, it's going to be quite difficult. The track itself, give it a 7. These F1 cars, they're not really made for this kind of circuit. Need a lot more space, etc. A lot of cambered corners though is quite good, and for a driver it must be a good experience. But yeah, I'll go with like maybe a 6 for the race itself, maybe a 7 for the circuit design. I know Qatar have got a multi-year deal, Matt. Do we expect to see F1 back there in the future? It doesn't start next year, does it? Is it 2023, I believe?
Yeah, 2023, the contract begins 10 years. I don't know if they're planning on going back to Doha, the circuit. I don't know if they're going to the street circuit or something. I heard rumors of a street circuit, which that'd be interesting. We get a lot of new street circuits these days. I mean, we're going to a new street circuit for the next race, but I don't know. I quite like the circuit. I wouldn't mind going back.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going back maybe 1 or 2 years, or if they alternate it like Germany have with their tracks in the past. But it's a clear MotoGP circuit. We saw that with the curbs, the track layout, and the fact it limited, it's very hard to follow through there. There's only one real line, whereas MotoGP, they're a lot smaller and nimbler, take different lines, etc. So I'd like to see them go somewhere else. Well, they've got the money, the Qatars, didn't they? So pull your finger out. Let's make a state-of-the-art venue, but let's not do an Abu Dhabi.
Oh, let's not do an Abu Dhabi. Let's not get into Abu Dhabi already. All right, so we'll save that for later.
We'll save that for later because it's coming thick and fast, the final rounds here. But yes, first time in Qatar for Formula One. Should we be there? There's always challenges. The World Cup's going there, so why don't F1 go there? What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, it's one of those circuits. It's on the calendar because there's a lot of money, isn't it? It's one of the events that Formula One are doing because the business Formula One gets a lot out of it. I'd like to see, I don't know if the fans were limited this weekend due to COVID, or if that was genuinely a turnout for the Qatar Grand Prix, because it was pretty low. I'm going to assume it was COVID related, but yeah. We've got so many races in the Middle East now as well. What's that? We've got Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, and Bahrain. That's four venues all come up in the last 20 years.
Yeah, well, a fact for you, that was the highest sporting event attendance ever in Qatar.
Wow.
It wasn't limited, Matt. I think it was about maybe 40 odd thousand off the top of my head, but I heard the stat that it was the highest sporting attendance venue, for an event ever in Qatar history. So they're breaking new ground there. And Matt, it's in the middle of bloody nowhere, so no one's going to get to it as well. If you saw them aerial shots, it was just pure desert and then this big lit up Christmas tree in the middle of the desert, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that does it as well. And probably F1 not too big of a thing over there in that region, as say. But yes, the circuit threw up some drama, didn't it, Matt? Going from practice, a number of failures, cars pushing a bit too hard over the curbs. And let's talk about the curbs there, because they was eating up F1 cars for breakfast and causing a lot of carnage.
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't like the first, like the initial curb, was it? The sort of red and white curb was flat. You could ride over that nice and easy. It was the white bits off to the side that are like properly meant to enforce track limits. They were just killing cars. Like, you did not want to go over those if you could help it. And yeah, like you said, we saw what Mazepin had to do a chassis change. I think he lost multiple front wings. Leclerc had to do a chassis change. We saw Gasly have a front wing fall off in qualifying. And then in the race, we had the punches, which might be most likely attributed to the excessive danger of the curbs.
Yeah, so it was quite a late announcement, wasn't it, Matt, this Qatar Grand Prix? So the track organisers didn't really have time to adapt it to Formula One. It is a bespoke MotoGP circuit, so the curbs are very different in characteristics. They can't have big sausage curbs, otherwise their motorbikes be launching through the air like Evel Knievel. But instead you have them serrated sort of edges on the edge of the track to try and punish drivers, but not absolutely murder them at the same time. And that threw up a huge challenge, because these F1 cars can carry so much corner speed. They're so heavy as well, aren't they, Matt? You know, we're on them corner exits. They're absolutely getting pounded. And you've got to feel for the drivers. If you run wide, you're going to know about it, because it's going to absolutely rattle any fillings you've got out. And yeah, for the old boys as well, it's going to be a true test. But so Pirelli, they took the hardest compound available to them to that circuit. And surely that would hold up, Matt. You know, we've had high-class failures in Silverstone over the years. They've addressed that issue coming into this season, as we saw Lewis Hamilton last season crossing the line on 3 wheels. And yeah, clearly they've sorted the tyres out, because there was no problem this weekend.
Oh, absolutely no issues at all this weekend. Yeah, it was, Pirelli did the sensible thing and did take the hardest available compounds, but obviously even the hard tyre was not able to hold up against the curbs. And I don't think that's an issue with Pirelli. And if it is, it's something fundamental within the tyre that's not just going to be a quick fix if it's even their hardest compound is failing. So it's definitely something, I think, with the track organised, that if we do go back to the Losail circuit, that they'll need to address those curves, because as much as it made for some very entertaining races, I should imagine if we were to continue to have tyre blowouts in the middle of a race, it would get pretty boring quite quickly, or annoying if when your favourite driver gets thrown out because his tyre blew up. And they had no warnings as well, did they? They were like, they just went randomly.
No, I think the Mercedes engineers said that there was a very, very small vibration, but nothing that you'd normally be concerned about, and it just completely let go. We heard Max on the team radio as well throughout the race saying that he started to pick up some vibrations, and we saw cars coming in a lot earlier than we expected into the pits, because the high loads that go through them, as soon as the tread depth was going, you know, is a real alarm bells ringing. After we saw Valtteri Bottas, he went 33 odd laps on those medium tyres before they let go, and it was looking like a good strategy, potentially pulling off a one-stop meets the hard. Do you think that would be a pretty sensible thing? But yeah, it wasn't to be. But let's switch back to qualifying. Qualifying threw up some interesting results as much as anything as well. Pierre Gasly really pulling it out the bag. We saw both the Alpines as well outperforming a lot of the midfield, which was quite a surprise to many. And I was really impressed. I even said it when I was watching qualifying to myself that, you know, I was happy to see Lewis out there very early on his final run, being a Hamilton fan, because yellow flags around the circuit like this, where there's a lot of traffic, you know, can become a thing. And what did we see, Matt?
Yeah, we saw Gasly get it slightly wrong. It took his front wing off, didn't it? He went over one of the curbs, murdered his front wing. That cut the tyre, and had to pull over on the straight, brought out the yellow flags. Nobody else could set a lap. It was a bit controversial with the yellow flags because they were out like properly, briefly. And I think the FIA or the stewards looked at it and went, okay, he's on the straight. He's pulled off the racing line to the side. He's not doing any harm where he is. No one's going to accidentally fly off and hit him unless, I don't know, someone has an act of craziness or a cramp in their right arm or something. So they've sort of put the yellow flags away, let everybody finish their laps, and we can have a good end to qualifying. But a rogue marshal, as Christian Horner put it, was continued to wave the yellow flag, and it caught drivers out, didn't it?
Yeah, it caught a number of drivers out. Well, two drivers in particular. We first saw a single yellow, which Bottas failed to slow down for. Then we saw the double waved yellow as well, which Max Verstappen got caught out with. So apparently the marshal was reacting to the actual incident in front of him. You know, a lot of it does come from race control in terms of when to put yellows out certain sectors because they can't see every part of the circuit. There might be an incident around the corner when they need to pre-warn drivers, etc. But the marshal was doing his job, reacting to what was in front of him, doing the safe thing. But, you know, it didn't come up on the dashboard. It didn't come up on the light panel, I believe. But the flag superseded everything. That's what Michael Massey and the FIA have said. And, you know, looking back to Austria, the previous seasons, I think Lewis Hamilton got, I think, was it a 5 or a 3-place grid penalty for something similar? So you have to be consistent with that, which was good to see as well. I know, you know, Max didn't quite like it, or Karen Horner either, but, you know, we moved with that. So Bottas ended up with a 3-place grid penalty and Max Verstappen with a 5-place penalty. So everything aligned for that man, Lewis Hamilton. He was at the sharp end of the order anyway. He's got quite a few cars between him. And at that point, Matt, you're hoping, if you're Lewis, that, you know, you're going to have a car between you and Max, eh?
Yeah, for sure. I think Lewis had like you said, everything aligned for him. He was on pole. Yeah, he was faster than everyone that weekend anyway. He took pole, but I think it was the biggest margin in a dry qualifying all season. And to then have Verstappen's only hope that race, I think realistically, was to sort of do what he did in Spain and just launch one at turn 1. Of course, Max can't do that from P7 on the grid. So Lewis has got not only 6 cars between himself and Verstappen. One of them is his teammate Valtteri Bottas. So it should have been nice and easy race for Hamilton, and in the end it was. And and Bottas, well, he didn't really do his job as holding up Max, but yeah, we'll get on to Bottas in a moment. Max did a good start. I will give him that. Launched his way up the grid. Got himself, I think he was P2 by like the end of lap 5 or something. But by that time, Lewis had stretched in a gap enough that Max was never able to catch up. Yeah.
All sounds all so easy. We saw Pierre Gasly, the main culprit for causing them penalties. Absolutely, you know, maybe he scripted it, maybe he didn't, maybe he's happy with that lap and said, let's hope no one else improves behind me. But yeah, great pace for the AlphaTauri, and specifically Gasly again pulling out another fantastic lap, fantastic performance in qualifying, starting on the front row. That doesn't happen every day. Then we saw that man. Is he retired? Surely not. He's still on the grid. Fernando Alonso back there in P3, and then we had the Ferraris and co, Esteban Ocon, etc. But yeah, you know, you expect a good result from Pierre Gasly and co. Get into that in a bit more. But Lewis Hamilton controlled the race. His only real scare would be if there was a safety car. He reacted every time, maybe a bit too early to the Red Bull team, and they pulled out that undercut, and he had about a 5 or more second lead at that point in the race. But you know, Mercedes replied in turn, and maybe it was a good thing in hindsight, because later in the race we saw on the other side of the garage, Bottas going for that one stop, starting on the medium tyre, going quite deep into around lap 33, and of course the wheels fell off the Mercedes. Tough to see, because he slipped back on the early stages, Valtteri Bottas, and really got stuck behind, who is it, the likes of Stroll, etc. Just couldn't really make any inroads. And you know, a lot of people do criticize Lewis, saying he's in the best car with the best machinery. That's a fact. He's in the best machinery, so he's got the best chance. But at the same time, we've seen Valtteri Bottas, who's no mug, is he? He's no mug, Matt, but he makes a meal of it when it comes to pulling off these kind of maneuvers.
Yeah, Valtteri Bottas, he's been one of those drivers, almost a little bit like Sebastian Vettel, but a bit worse, in that he's very good when he's at the front, leading a race, controlling the race. And on those days, he can be untouchable. But as often what Seb was criticised of back when he was winning his championships, once you put him in the pack, in the midfield, things don't go well for him. And the problem with Bottas is he just does not make up places. He doesn't pick them off one by one. He just sits behind someone for lap after lap after lap. And I'll give him some credit in Qatar. He did better than he normally would. But I think a lot of his overtakes were just, he got DRS on someone and they couldn't defend against him. There was very rarely, there wasn't like a move that I was looking at going, wow, that's a good one, Bottas. Not like when we saw Hamilton come through the field in Brazil. Like his move on Norris at the end of the sprint race was, I'll admit, Norris didn't defend too hard, but still Lewis had to lick the stamp and send it, and he did commit to it, and he got the move done. Bottas would never go for that kind of thing.
Yeah, Bottas doesn't seem to be too much of a risk taker. Maybe it's the setup, the confidence within the car. We know Lewis is very good at setting that Mercedes up and really refine the pace. And to be half a second ahead of your nearest challenger, let alone your teammate, was a big result in the end, and a big showing on performance. Because Valtteri led, remember, the early stages of practice. He was on the pace at the front of the order. It was Lewis that was struggling. But, when it comes to it and it's showtime, Lewis always delivers. And Bottas tends to start to fade away under the pressure. He's got that pressure off his shoulders now. We thought this would be the time where we'd see Valtteri 5.0, whatever you want to call him, absolutely send it through the field. Nothing to worry about, and maybe Toto says to him, there'll be a bonus if you do crash into one of those other cars in the balls. But he just didn't really pull it off today. But I was sad to see him after making up that ground. I think a telling sign, Matt, was when there was a freeway battle going down the straight. He had the DRS as well, and he still couldn't get it done. Didn't have the confidence just to let off the brakes a bit later into the corner and just, take the maneuver through turn one. And he just played it safe. And that's the problem. Don't expect George Russell to be playing it safe next year.
Absolutely not. I mean, George Russell's young, isn't he? George Russell's, he wants to prove himself. He'll definitely be up there sending it. But yeah, like you say, Bottas, I think in that moment, he was far to the inside. He was on the very dusty part of the track. I think we've got to remember that. The track offline was horrendous. I mean, we saw every time somebody tried to sort of drive around the outside of turn one, which you'd think would be possible. It's the kind of corner where you can do it. They were just struggling for grip out offline because it was so dusty. But yeah, Bottas conceded position and I think he got Tsunoda, but he had to spend another lap or two behind Stroll, which just cost him that bit more.
It is what it is, but we move on to the next best team, or were they in the grand scheme of things in this race? Because Max Verstappen was demoted down the order, receiving that 5-place grid penalty. He had a lot of work to do. And we're talking about risk-taking. I feel on the opening sequence of corners, he really did take a few risks through there. And Fernando Alonso, he doesn't look in the rearview mirrors, and he wasn't watching for Max Verstappen coming, and it was almost disaster for the World Championship leader, man.
Yeah, for sure. It was he got a good start, Max, which was great. But then through turn one, he just played it so smart. He watched everybody else just try and outbrake each other, all ran out wide. He just took it easy, held the tight line, and just drove past most of them. And he got a good run off turn one, I think maybe a bit close to the racing line. He got the grip. And he did, like you say, have the run on Alonso. I think Fernando was not expecting Max to be there. And so just kind of drove across him. Max saw it coming, just put a wheel off the track and it was all fine. Got Alonso a few laps later, but it was some good racing. And Alonso as well. He had a good start. Or not initially, I don't think. When I found out that the fast starting Fernando Alonso was P3 on the grid, I was like, he's going to lead at turn one. Watch this. He's going to lead by turn one. And he didn't, which was a little bit disappointing. But he still got Gasly a few corners later, which was good to watch.
Yeah, we heard a statement from him pre-race saying, the guys ahead of me have got something to lose. I've got absolutely everything to gain. And that's the pure Fernando talk. And I was quite, very concerned for Lewis Hamilton going down into turn one because he would have to watch out for that seasoned veteran down there. But the guys on the inside row, the even side of the grid. It's really struggled to get traction. We even saw it on the formation lap. Then coming across quite early, you didn't want to get the pickup on the tyres, like you said, with the dust and everything offline. So we didn't have any other categories going around there, cleaning up the track, laying rubber down throughout the weekend. So that was a big part. And that's what also helped Fernando establish himself up and have a fairly confident start. I think it also helped Max Verstappen as well. I think he started on that the odd side of the grid and he had a confidence in the car going down to turn one, whereas others might have really struggled. But yes, so Max Verstappen, what did we make of him? Fastest lap, Mats, and was it the fastest package this weekend? In race trim, or because we didn't really. It was hard to tell, wasn't it? Because Lewis, he got out front, he controlled the race. Max Verstappen, he said himself that he knew he couldn't close that gap, and he just tried to manage the tyres towards the end. But how close was the Red Bull in that race, do you think?
I think in the race, the Red Bull was better than it was in qualifying, but I still think the Mercedes was definitely the car ahead. I think when Max knew, because Max, there was at no point in that race was Max ever closing up the gap to Lewis. And I think if at any point Max upped the pace, Lewis always had an answer for him. He'd always, the next lap, go just as quick. So I always got that feeling that unless there's some circumstance now, Hamilton just has to control this one. He's not going to come under too much threat from Max Verstappen, who damaged limitation from P7 on the grid. He did get himself up in a second place, which he held quite comfortably. Fastest lap was his as well. He did have it before he made that late pit stop. He was still on for the fastest lap, but then obviously once in that final lap, they could just secure it by putting him on some fresh softs, and that sort of guaranteed he'd get the point, limit the damage to Lewis. Only lost 6 points in the title fight, brings it down to 8 now, the gap in the championship with 2 races to go. It's the closest title fight we've had in the modern point system. It's never been this close before.
That's why you are the fact and stat man, Matt, because you always pull these little treats of knowledge to fruition for us. So yeah, always thank you for that. But it's the closest it's been since you can ever remember, really. Maybe the closest it's been maybe in the final round was that year with Alonso, was it Webber, Vettel, but with 2 races to go, it is nip and tuck. So Verstappen come home P2, and Lewis must have been thinking, God, what have I got to do to really pull away from this guy? He started way back down the order, maybe what like Max was in Sao Paulo, seeing Lewis win that race comfortably with all that penalty and drama situation. But I can't remember, Matt. Who finished 3rd in the race? Can you put a finger on it?
It was some old guy. Nobody cares about him. Retired years ago, I heard. It was that Fernando Alonso guy, wasn't it? He pulled off the one stop. Fernando Alonso, honestly. How everybody else having tyre failures, and there's just Fernando, just got it done, nice and easy. Perhaps saved a little bit with the virtual safety car. I think that helped him, especially against Perez, but he did what he had to do, and it was Alonso who got on the podium that day, and a great drive from the Spaniard.
It's what you want to see. It's beautiful to see Fernando back up there. Real one of the icons of this era in the sport. A lot of people rate him a lot more than the likes of Lewis and even Max Verstappen. And it's a young crop, but beautiful scenes. See him back on the podium, and also for the Alpine team as well. Very rewarding. They've had a couple of good results, but it's been a fairly tough year in the midfield battle as well for them. So that puts them, solidifies them ahead of the Alpha Tauri as well, with that haul of points this weekend. And Alpha Tauri gets them in a bit, but they've struggled, man, to really convert it recently. But Fernando Alonso, first time on the podium since 2014. That sounds recent in my head, but that is many years ago. The last time Fernando Alonso was on the podium, Lewis Hamilton had 1 world championship to his name.
Yeah, Lewis Hamilton had 1 world championship to his name. Max Verstappen hadn't even debuted in Formula One. It was the first season since Mark Webber's retirement. It was that long ago.
Mercedes had no championships to their name at that point.
Yeah, that's weird to think about. They've got so many now.
He's been away. He's won Le Mans since. He's gone to Indy. He's been at the Dakar Rally. And he's back again. Just fancied another go at it.
Yeah, he did fancy another go, and he has got himself some silverware for his troubles as well. I think it'll be really interesting to see how he goes into the new regulations next season, especially if Alpine have a car that's fighting towards the front. And the results to last Sunday, it was huge against AlphaTauri, wasn't it? I think with Ocon P5 as well, 25 points at Alpine. AlphaTauri, I'm pretty sure, got nothing from a Gasly front row.
I mean, it was like it was a beautiful qualifying for AlphaTauri. You're thinking we could be on for a podium here today. You know, we generally could. The pace looked good in the car all weekend. He looked up there. He was in the top 4 kind of like fastest cars on that circuit. Put it on there, but what actually happened to Pierre Gasly during that race? Remind us, Matt, because he's a forgotten man in that race, because they're starting P2, finished P11 outside the points. The forgotten man.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything from anyone about what happened to him, but I think it must have been he was just struggling on his tires, because he was overtaken by Alonso early on and sort of fell away from the Alpine, then had to make an early pit stop, put him on a 2-stop strategy. And you'd think, though, if you're on a 2-stop, you're going to come charging through the field. You'll have good pace. You're just, you're going to lose time doing the extra stop. Gasly did the extra stop and didn't really have any pace to show for it. He was doing the same sort of pace and time, just the guys ahead of him, I think. And in the end, finished P11, well down the order from where he started. Yeah,
tough day at the office, and they're going to have to take a long, hard look at themselves when it comes to the race pace. There was nowhere to be seen with the heavy fuel, etc. And it's a pretty much a one-man team at the minute, AlphaTauri, all season pretty much. Gasly, like you in that Ferrari in ACC, you're going to be carrying it on your shoulders. And Yuki Tsunoda, that move's not really paid off at all, if anything. And bad appointment. I know it might bring in a few sponsors, but they're looking a bit silly now after pre-season testing promised so much. That car looked beautifully poised, balanced, and an all-round great package, especially with that Honda engine, which looked the best on the grid coming into this season. So, a long, hard look at themselves after this one, but big result for Alpine. And, they're going to be super happy with that. And Fernando on the radio saying, Esteban, defend like a lion. Did he?
The defense was more like that of my cat, to be honest, Rich. Now, he put up a good effort, to be fair, against Checo. I think it was Alonso defending in Hungary to give Ocon the win was fabulous, but we do have to remember that was at Hungary. It's notoriously difficult to pass at Hungary, and that meant that the skill of Alonso could hold up Hamilton. I think at the Qatar circuit, you didn't need to have such a pace advantage to get a move done. The DRS was powerful. There were overtaking opportunities at turns 1, 2, and 3. And Ocon, he did fight back. He did try and have a go at him, but it was Perez knew what he was doing. He just covered the inside, and there was no way Ocon was going to dance around the outside of him with Perez in a Red Bull on fresher tyres. It just wasn't going to happen. But Ocon put in the effort, and it didn't matter in the end. Alonso still got his podium, but yeah.
Yeah, he cost him about 2 seconds on that lap, so Esteban claims anyway. But, initially got past so easily. You're like, he defended like a kitten, not a lion. But then he come back at him pretty hard, made Perez think twice about it anyway. And let's talk about Perez, because the decision to bring him in, you normally split the strategy in that situation, try and cause some problems in the grand scheme of things by putting him on a potential one-stop, you would have thought, leaving him out there a bit longer, and you never know what's going to happen. A safety car or something like that will get a cheap pit stop with a VSE. But that second pit stop really put him back into the pack. Oh my, he must have had deja vu. How many cars did he have to go past time and time again? And he was a real live wire. And that's just showing what a great number 2 he's been this year, Matt, because he gets the job done, unlike Valtteri in the Merc garage.
Yeah, for sure. I think in qualifying, you got to remember Perez having to come through the field wasn't a circumstance. It was completely his own doing. Qualified P11, didn't get into Q3.
Oh, yeah.
But I think then in the race, Perez showed his talent and moved up the order. And I think that's the difference between Bottas and Perez. Over one lap in qualifying, Bottas can be right up there with Hamilton and Verstappen. He will get himself in the mix. And that's something we haven't seen from Perez. Perez is always, apart from at Austin, where it looked like he actually might be in the mix, Perez has kind of been a step behind in qualifying, but in the race, that's where Checo's come into his own, and Valtteri has fallen away as a number 2. And I think that's why Mercedes have realised, actually, now they've got competition, they can't just keep Bottas as their number 2 driver. They need someone who's going to be up there a bit more, and that's why they've taken George Russell. But good race from Checo, fighting through. Had to do so much overtaking and on so many cars, time and time again, but he did make all the moves he needed to, other than the one on Fernando. One thing, just quickly while we're on this topic, one thing I want to say, it's nothing to do with the racing, it's to do with the TV directors. Stop showing me the fans celebrating midway through a battle. I don't care. All right.
Put me in a cooler. Put me in a little cooler in a little box or something.
Exactly, because Perez passed Ocon, and you could tell that Ocon wasn't just going to let him go. And what do? No, they want to show this one Mexican fan being like, yeah, go Checo. I don't care about him. I want to see Ocon defend like a lion.
Yeah, some of the race director this year in terms of the TV has been questionable. Monaco springs to mind straight away. What are these guys doing? They're more like golf sort of like directors more than F1 anyway, a bit slow to it. But Perez, great drive. Like you say, I forgot all about that. The qualifying performance was terrible. He got caught out in that, and he would have had a long, hard look at himself after that. But got a great start. Was up to around 7th, wasn't he, in the early phases? And it was Valtteri who slipped back to about P11 after starting ahead of him. And then after that, after Ocon, we had like the Sea-Boy Stroll. Didn't set the world on fire, I wouldn't say, but the package was in a better position today, or on the weekend, should I say? And making strides. But I think it's a one-off performance, don't you, from the Aston Martin? What's your thoughts?
I think the Aston was strong at Qatar, I'd have to say, and it was a little bit disappointing from Seb. Because he looked like the quicker driver through the weekend, was ahead in qualifying, and then I think he had a mistake at turn 1 or something on the opening corner which put him to the back, and he still recovered well. I think he still finished 10th and got a point for his troubles, but it would have been nice to see him up there. But a quiet race from Stroll, but a very successful one. P6, 8 points. I think even if Aston Martin are going to be regularly appearing in sort of that top 10, I don't think we're going to see Lance P6 every week, because I don't think Lance is a good enough driver for P6 every week. I don't think he's got the consistency, is what I mean. I think he can do that on occasion, but he's not doing that every week. And I think that's where you'd like to think the experience of Vettel, if Aston Martin build a good car, you'd like to think he's going to be able to be more consistently scoring points.
Yeah. Well, Vettel's dropped into that team this year. Once again, he's going to have to adapt to a different concept. It's not his car. He's not led the real development on it. I'm making excuses for him, I know. But Lance Stroll, when he's in the sweet spot, he's good. Like we've seen at Turkey in the past. And Azerbaijan is one of his favourites as well. But Aston Martin are languishing 7th in the standings. And for a big budget team like them, that's going to be a real kick in the gonads. None of them are in the top 10 in the Drivers' Championship either. So it's been a real poor season for them. And Daddy Boy Stroll is not going to be too impressed. He's going to be expecting a big bounce back for next season, Mel.
Yeah, I'm sure Aston Martin will get it together next season. I think the investments that they're putting into that team, they definitely want to go up the order. And I think they will. I don't want to jinx it, but I think they will produce a good car next year. And they up there with the likes of McLaren and maybe Ferrari. We'll see where Ferrari are next year. I'm not really sure yet.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either. Talking about Ferrari, there was the next on circuit. They finished 7th and 8th. Sainz and Leclerc. Leclerc started well down the order as well. Had a lot of work to do. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, was just sort of treading water throughout the race. The Ferrari looks a lot better packaged, a lot more planted. They've had the power unit final tokens used in the final stage of this season, and that's really pushed them back up the order in the midfield battle. And in these I think I saw a stat somewhere, Matt, in this triple header, I think McLaren have earned 4 points, and I think Ferraris have gained about 40 or something like that. So
we'll bring it up, Rich, because I know exactly what stat you're on about. It is 47 points for Ferrari and 4 for McLaren. So big gains for the Italian team.
That's one hell of a swing, and the Tifosi will be cheering that one on. So it looks promising for them. They're gaining momentum at the right time. Remember, the power units, they will pretty much remain as they are, kind of thing, for the next season or so. So that is promising. They're going to have a good power unit in the back of the car to rocket them up the field. I expect them to bounce back pretty well in terms of the new regulations. But the driver pairing as well, been very good. Solid pair. Carlos Sainz, he's looked a bit feisty in the last few rounds. He gave Lando Norris a few words of advice, shall we say, after, I don't know what he said to him in Parc Ferme after the Sao Paulo Grand Prix last time, but Norris wasn't too keen on what he said. And he's getting his elbows out, and good to see him settled in very well this season. Yeah,
he's adapted to his new team very quickly. And you kind of expect that from Sainz. He's switched teams a lot in his career. He started off at Toro Rosso and then went to Renault mid-season.
Yeah.
And then he made a switch to McLaren, and now he's come to Ferrari. It's all in a short time, all since 2015. He's done a lot of change of team. And like you say, he's adapted to that car nice and quickly. He's there with Leclerc, I think, in the championship. Is he ahead or only a few points behind? And he's doing the job. He's getting it done.
Yeah, in terms of the two Ferraris, we've got Leclerc on 152 and Sainz on 145.5 points. So not much to split the two drivers there. And Leclerc, he has been the talisman in the team. He's the golden boy, the golden goose, and that won't change anytime soon for the Monegasque. And he's been having a great season. We've seen some standout performances at the Silverstone and that quali lap in Monaco, which wasn't to be. He'll get another bite at the cherry. But looking good for Ferrari. Then it was looking good for McLaren. Lando Norris had a great starting position in the race, thanks to the other penalties, but couldn't make it stick and just started to slide backwards ever so slowly throughout the race, Matt. And that McLaren package, have they just frozen development, or have they going backwards? Is everyone else taking a step forwards? What do you think's happened to McLaren since the 1-2 we saw at Monza?
Yeah, I think a combination of factors, I imagine. I imagine they've, like you said, they're probably not developing that car at all now because their focus will be on next year. I think they've not had, in these past few races, it's not all been pace. I think they have had some bad luck. I think at Qatar, Norris was running up the order and then he had to pit again because of, I don't know if they confirmed it as a puncher, but I know that they said that
yes.
Lando had reported that he was getting a funny feeling and they took no hesitation and boxed him straight away after we'd already seen, I think, at that point, Bottas have a puncher and maybe one of the Williams as well. So they took the right call there, but it was just unfortunate because he was on for a P5, maybe P4, but in the end had to drop back, and I think he was 9th by the checkered flag, and losing more ground to Ferrari. And he's on the verge of losing his P5 in the drivers as well now. I think Leclerc's only a couple points away.
Yeah, it's all to play for. It's just going to be about who blinks first in that championship. So 153 points for Norris, 152 for Charles Leclerc. So big battle on in the final stages. In terms of the constructors as well, Ferrari have taken a big step forward, 297.5 points, McLaren 258. So they're well established themselves in that third spot. They're coveted best of the rest, pretty much. Who thought with Ferrari be best of the rest, some 5 years ago, but that's where they are in today's era. Moving on from that, Matt. McLaren struggles. AlphaTauri, we spoke about them briefly. Pierre Gasly, pretty much nowhere. And Yuki Tsunoda, he's just not having a good rookie season, is he?
No, I don't think it's been a terrible rookie season. I think it's very easy to remember the rookie seasons of people like Hamilton and Verstappen who did have, or Vettel who did have these phenomenal rookie seasons. I think he's had a fairly average rookie season, which isn't a good thing because that obviously as a driver sets him up that he's not going to be world champion. He's going to be maybe at best somebody a bit like Lance Stroll, who's destined for the midfield permanently. yeah, I don't know. We'll see how Tsunoda does next season once he's got some experience. Gasly doing what he can, great in qualifying, but that car has just struggled in the race. We've seen it time and time again, because I think if you did the points based on qualifying, AlphaTauri would be arguably top of the midfield, because they are regularly, Gasly's getting into P4, P5, P6. Yeah. I think he's qualified P6 like a ridiculous amount of times this season. But yeah, like I say, every time in the race, they just drop back behind the McLarens, behind the Ferraris, and behind Alpines as well.
Yeah, another team that's taken a step forward in recent races. I know they've not been setting the world alight. It's been the Alfa Romeo the team. I feel like the car is in a better place, a hell of a lot better place than it was at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And they're capitalizing on everyone else's struggles. Maybe whether that's, they have that upgraded unit in the back of the car. I'm not quite sure, but still wasn't the best day at the office. Raikkonen 14th, Giovinazzi 15th. Of course, Giovinazzi confirmed as losing his seat in the transition to Formula E. Kimi Raikkonen will retire and go into party mode after this season. And we'll see all change with Bottas leading the team at the Sauber Alfa Romeo outfit. And we're going to have Guan Yu Zhou joining them over there. So all change there. And with a new car, that's going to be quite challenging from them next season. Just with that relationship with the engineers, the feedback with the two new drivers in there, Matt. So it's going to be a tricky season next year for Alfa Romeo.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether they come to regret their decision to bring two new drivers in. That could have been the positive of keeping Giovinazzi for at least one more year. I think with their advancement this season, I think it comes down to Ferrari. I think Ferrari have put their upgrades into their power unit, and that's showing for Alfa Romeo as they've made jumps at build as well. I mean, Giovinazzi's put on some stellar qualifying performances. I think we saw him Monza and at Zandvoort as well. He was right up there in the top 10, doing a great job for the team. Obviously, it didn't come to fruition in the race. That team, I think they've got like 11 points from the season so far. They'll keep pushing on because they still want to catch Williams, of course, who are, I think, 12 points up the road. I think you probably can check that one for me.
Bang on the money. Bang on the money. 23 points, Williams, 2-11's Alfa Romeo, and crucial points for the Williams team, really capitalizing and making hay in that mid part of the season. But yeah, Williams, tough day at the office. Both guys, I think, picked up punches in the race there. Latifi had to retire from the race itself, and George Russell, another tough day at the office. But this is all character building for him when he's going to jump in that Mercedes. He's going to know how to get every little extra piece of speed out that car, because he's really had to work for every single thousandth of the second in that Williams. And I think that's going to be the making of him in the next seasons, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. Mr. Saturday. Mr. Saturday's going to miss a little bit in the last few races. I think the Williams has been slightly off the pace. We saw him get out qualified by Latifi a couple of weeks back in Sao Paulo. He was a bit better this week in Qatar, but yeah, I think we're not seeing him in Q3 for a few weeks, which is a shame for him. But I think he's just happy now to round out his season. He's got his Mercedes seat confirmed, so he can just round out a season with Williams, hopefully cling on to that P8 in the Constructors, and then move on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, that'd be huge if they can get that 8 from the Constructors, because every point means prizes, means money, and you can throw a bit more at next season's car. And then Haas. What can you say about them? Nikita didn't spin. It's getting a bit boring now. It was a fixture for every race. Like, I'm sure down the bookies you could put a bet on what lap he is going to spin, but we've had that fun taken away from us, man.
Unbelievable. Nikita, stop getting better as a driver. Please go back to your carnage ways. And they still help us a little bit, the two Haas drivers, because they are hopeless at getting out the way, I've noticed. Like, absolutely hopeless, the pair of them. Yeah. When I don't know if it's the engineers don't tell them or something, or if they're just both. They don't get out of the way at all quick enough. I'm like, you're just holding him up. Please move. Unless it's Lewis behind, in which case I'm like, no, stay there. Keep doing what you're doing. Good job.
Now, I saw this somewhere, I think it was on Twitter, Matt. Mick Schumacher is about to get lapped for the third time in Abu Dhabi. He has the race leader coming up to lap him, Lewis Hamilton. He's going to completely forget about looking in his mirror and impede him and maybe push him off the track in terms of keeping his dad's legacy intact. Do you think that's something he would ever do, or is he too clean a driver?
He's a good kid, Mick. I don't think he'd do anything like that. I mean, Max could try and pay him. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe if Mr. Helmut Marko gets on the line and say you can have Yuki's seat if you do it, then maybe, I don't know. But yeah, I don't see it happening. I think a more likely scenario for a collision happening in the final race, it will be the two protagonists going into each other.
Yeah, either be that or Valtteri Bottas will have a last hoorah to take Max with him off the track, which would be that ultimate boiling point in the championship. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope it's between the pair of them. Whatever happens, it's been an iconic season so far. We head into Jeddah coming up next. Will the track be finished? It's looking pretty polished so far. We have the paddock pretty much sorted out and the pit lane, etc. We've seen it fully illuminated now. And it's just the final touches. They'll throw absolutely everything at this now to get it done, Matt. Expect it to be done in the next couple of weeks. But in this race in Qatar, the final few laps, we did have the VSC, which sort of was an anti-climax. We expected Perez to have a few last-minute lunges, which we was robbed of. We've now had 13 podium finishers this season, 13 people on the podium. That's going to be some recent record of some sort. We've really had a thriller of a season so far, and to have 13 different drivers on the podium over half the grid, I mean, that's some compliment, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think we had a similar number last season as well, which then, like you say, was much higher than we've had anything in the past few years. And I think it all comes down to there's only two big teams instead of three, because Ferrari have fallen off a cliff. So there's more opportunity for a midfield team to get their car up on the podium. You know, we've seen some crazy races where those midfield teams will even win a Grand Prix, which has been fabulous to see.
Yeah, it's a bit of that, a bit of the unknown as well. Going to these circuits, which we don't have the data on, going to these different places. I think that's thrown a spanner in the works, especially last season, like you say, with coronavirus as well. But yeah, very promising. And of course, the grid gets that much more competitive just as we're going to get a regulation change. You know, we've been crying out to change the cars because it's been so dull, so boring. It's been a Mercedes championship for God knows how long. And now we're finally getting two different teams going toe-to-toe at the front of the order, and it's thrown up in the air once again.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how a tiny little regulation change we had this season has it's brought the front two teams closer together. We've had in the last couple of years all the midfield pack close right up, and then we've decided, you know what, let's just mix it all up again. But I think it is time to mix it all up again. We've seen 7-8 years now of the same team up at the front. I think it would be nice to mix it up once more.
Yeah, so all changed for next season. Brand new car concepts are coming into play. We have had confirmation that DRS will remain in place. If it is too powerful on these new era cars, the FIA do hold the right to remove it at any given time. So midway through, or even after a couple of rounds, don't expect it, any less than after the first 4 rounds when they got some good data at different kinds of circuits. They could potentially pull the plug on DRS. I mean, it's been a great assistance in terms of the racing. It's been a bit too easy at times as well. Some circuits we have 2 to 3 detection and deployment zones. Are you a fan of DRS? Will you miss it if it goes? What's your thoughts, Matt?
It's important for the current cars, that's for sure, because if we didn't have it, we'd have hardly any racing. I think it makes the overtaking a bit artificial, and I think sometimes it kills the racing because instead of going for that brave move, you just go, no, don't risk it. Just wait for the DRS straight 2 corners round. You'll get it done much easier. So I think it'll be, if we can get some cars that can race nice and close, I will be very happy to see it go, and we'll have some proper racing back at the racetracks.
Yeah, we'll get a bit more purity to it. But what else we got to talk about today, Matt? Green pens, the yellow flags, rogue marshal. So Christian Horner called to the stewards. So Karen, he got the phone call. He said, "Yeah, it's been a lot of FIA summons in the last few weeks, Matt, and the FIA are making all the headlines once again."
Yeah, they were busy, weren't they, all weekend? And then, yeah, like you say, Christian Horner being summoned to the stewards. I saw that pop up on my Instagram feed, and I just saw a Christian Horner summoned to stewards. I was like, oh, for fudge's sake, what's happened now? Right, we have all the drama after qualifying, and now something's going to happen in the race, and it's all going to kick off. And in the end, it was just Mr. Horner getting a bit angry and saying something about a rogue marshal, and then he only got a warning for it, didn't he? And what he got something else. What was it, like community service or something?
Community service. Yeah. He has to do what Sebastian Vettel done in Silverstone: go clear up all the trash after the race in the grandstands, I think. But yeah, talking about the FIA as well. Of course, we still had it dragging on after the last race in Sao Paulo. The Mercedes team had the right to review request sent to the FIA after they finally downloaded Max Verstappen's POV going down in that overtake where he just crowded Lewis off the track, is the way I'm going to describe it. Do you think there was a case to be answered in this one, and what kind of precedent does this set with no further action taken, Matt?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think in terms of it not being reviewed, I'd argue it wasn't so much because the stewards looked at it again and thought, no, we don't need to do anything about that. I think it was their grounds for review, wasn't it? It was considered, it was new evidence. It was relevant. But the third criteria you have to hit is it has to be significant. And I think the FIA decided that this new evidence didn't provide anything that they kind of didn't already know. I think they said from the angles they already had, from the data they already had, they already knew what had happened. And I think that's why they decided maybe that they don't have the right to review. But I do think that in terms of racing, it's kind of, if you can get away with that absolutely scot-free, you're going to see a lot more chaos and carnage, because that was, Max didn't make the corner himself. Both cars ran off wide. It wasn't on. There was basically complete ignoring of the track limits. I think what they should have done, black and white flag at the time it happened. That would have been nice and simple. Okay, we don't want to penalise you because that could be really dramatic and controversial and everything. But that's not on. Don't do it again. And we would be fine. We'd have no debate. But now we do. And I think several drivers have said they're going to adjust their driving standards.
Yeah, the drivers went into one of their race debriefs with Michael Massey. Like we've seen, we've been privy to a couple of them on YouTube, etc., in terms of the driver debriefings and topics that come up. Of course, like Lewis Hamilton undoing his seatbelts, that kind of things discussed, and also any on-track concerns, curbs, certain corners, and things like that. But I think it's been clarified by Michael Massey that that kind of move is not on. You will be punished for it, but that hasn't really come through to the mainstream and to us. But yeah, it could have been a black and white flag, slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. Try that again. We've seen it in other races, etc. Then yeah, it won't be tolerated. But we move on. Like you say, the FIA, they have all that information. They have the steering angles available, the throttle, the brake inputs. They've got all the telemetry from the cars live at any given time. So I think that was the deciding factor, like you say, that just seeing Max's steering input wouldn't have changed anything because they already had that. But for us peasants, it's not as straightforward. So yeah, we move on into the final two rounds. And the war of words is really spiced up between Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. You could really make a documentary, a film out of this, and I'm sure Netflix are going to make a meal out of it, because Karen and Toto have been going at it. We've seen Toto in on the camera, haven't we, in the garage, which is an overnight meme, and it's taken the world by storm. We're getting iconic images. Karen started to lose his shit, and Toto is really going to start aging at a rapid rate. Toto's already said we're going to bring out the spicy engine for the next round. He's going to put that Brazil engine in the back of the Mercedes. So Lewis actually had an older power unit. It's going to go full send with these longer straights. Talking of longer straights, Matt, Mercedes rear wing.
Mercedes rear wing. It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because the only evidence we've got of a dodgy rear wing is these photos that Red Bull are showing of the score marks behind the lower flap, which would suggest that the lower flap is moving. And judging by the size of those scoring marks, that looks like it's moving more than it should be. I mean, I don't think that bit's meant to move at all. So it's an interesting one. I think Red Bull have been doing all the talk, saying, "Oh yeah, we know exactly what they're doing, and they're cheating." And okay, why haven't you protested it then? I think they're talking like they know exactly what they've done and that it's not on. But I don't think they really know. I think they just have maybe decided, yeah, there's something a bit dodgy going on there, but we can't quite put our fingers on it, and hence why it's not yet been protested. I think even if they were to protest it, what's going to happen when the limbo wing on the Red Bull was a thing? All that happened was the FIA they changed the test they do on the rear wing. They said, all right, you've got 2-3 races to sort your rear wing out, and then we're going to introduce this new test. They can't do that for Mercedes because there's only 2 races left for the season. So if they want to give Mercedes a time to put a new wing on the car that doesn't maybe flex so much or whatever it's going on the back of that car, well, the season's going to be over by that point anyway. So Red Bull kind of need to pick a weekend and prove the Mercedes is illegal on that weekend and get them kicked out of an event if they want anything to come out of this rear wing.
Well, I don't think we're done with this topic, Matt. I think in 2 weeks' time, that is going to be the hot topic. They've spoken about it. It's not been as big a concern in Qatar. He has said it come to light in Sao Paulo, where it really started to dump a lot of drag, and that's what it's doing. You have the upper elements, which is the DRS, and you have the lower elements. So the DRS will open, and that bit at the bottom will always stay firmly where it is, or so it should. But this one is slowly. When we increase the top speed and the load at the top point of the wing, it just ever so slightly comes off. Then when you get back in and you need the downforce, it will lift back up. And that's where we're seeing the score marks on the trailing edges onto the sort of end plates, as it were. So I think it will be protested in Jeddah. Definitely, 100% it'd be stupid not to. But the FIA did examine. They've done a load test on the Mercedes rear wing back in Qatar. We haven't heard anything about it. Was they running the same configuration? The gap was a lot closer. I think they'll get away with it. I think they will. And I think it's another example of Mercedes' brilliance. We've seen the DAS systems. And these engineers, they're looking for every minuscule advantage. And Mercedes just, proving how clever they are. I think they've shot themselves in the foot as well, Matt, because, when they did question Red Bull's flexi rear wing, and then we saw the new, the new regulation, not regulation, but new direction from the FIA that it's sort of brought light to the subject, and now Mercedes are under the spotlight again. So,
I fully agree with you. I mean, obviously they were always going to protest the limbo wing, but yeah, now real wings have become such like a talking point this season. They've kind of always been just something on the car that's, the teams develop it, but there's never been nothing controversial on it. And then this season, it's all kicked off with the rear wing. You've got the limbo wing, Mercedes dodgy DRS, and now Mercedes with their score marks on the rear wing. It's all kicking off.
Yeah, it's such a big area now because of you're restricted around the rear end of the car, and it's just a hot topic. And we already saw Red Bull this weekend struggling with their rear wing. It started stalling and started flapping around, didn't it? Was it in qualifying, etc.? That wouldn't produce any bigger gap, apparently. So there's nothing to worry about. If anything, it will cost them a bit more drag, was reports from the Red Bull. But watch that one. We're going to get the spicy engine out. They're going to have the full send machine. And who would you rather be in this position right now? Would you rather be Max Verstappen with an 8-point lead going into the final 2 rounds based on your career in esports racing, Matt? Or would you rather be the guy with the quicker package, with the confidence behind him, back-to-back wins going into these final 2 rounds?
Lewis Hamilton every single day of the week right now. I think it's his championship to lose at this point, if I'm honest. despite going into the final 2 rounds 8 points behind, I think he's got a car that is significantly now faster than the Red Bull. Not to the point where it's like absolutely wiping the floor with the Red Bull like it used to, but it's enough now that I think we've seen it now at 2 venues. The Red Bull just not able to fight the Mercedes, which we haven't seen all season. I think next week, the Jeddah circuit should be an easy win for Lewis with the spicy engine. Now they put that circuit on the F1 game. You take so much of it flat out that if Mercedes don't win, it's because something crazy has happened. I'm expecting a pole position margin for Hamilton over the Red Bull to be, I reckon, about half a second. It could be. The only hope for Jeddah, it's a street circuit. It's the first time we're going there. If we have a boring race, I'm just going to be so disappointed. You know, every street circuit delivers on its debut, apart from Russia. But that's not really a street circuit. You know, I think Baku's delivered on its debut and has delivered every race since. I remember Singapore delivered on its debut. I don't know about Monaco. Monaco's been around since, I don't know.
It was crashing in the water in the opening round. So.
There you go. Sounds very entertaining, and I would like to see a repeat in Saudi Arabia.
Well, Saudi Arabia is apparently a higher speed version of Baku. And if Baku wasn't fast enough, this one is going to be absolutely scary. So for me, I'm scared for Lewis. You know, I'm a massive admirer of him, but I'm really scared of what can happen here. He's got the wind in his sails, but going into these final races, Jeddah, a big unknown. It's going to be about who hits the ground running, who's going to get that data, who's going to get the car in the sweet spot. There's going to be a lot of simulation work going, but until you touch down in Jeddah, get that car on the circuit and the engineers get that feedback, and we see how the car reacts to the circuit, it's just going to be one hell of a unknown. And with the layout of the circuit, we could see safety cars galore. It's going to come down to strategy. It's going to come down to more than just the drivers, the engineers, the strategists, and just the, you know, the seat of your pants feeling. That's what's going to win this championship in these final couple of rounds, Matt. And it's going to be edge of your seat stuff. Jeddah, let's hope we get there to start with and that we get an actual event. I'm sure it'll be the biggest embarrassment ever if they don't. So surely we're going to have a race in Jeddah.
Yeah, they've really taken it like late, haven't they? Getting that circuit really, like considering we're now 2 weeks away from having a race in Saudi Arabia, and I'm pretty sure it's almost there, but it still needs the final touches done to it. There's gonna be so much dust on that circuit as well, from how new it is and how late the sort of construction crews will have all left. They're not going to have enough time to sort of clean up that circuit. I think that's going to cause a bit of drama as well. But yeah, it's the 2021 Formula One season, Rich. It's not going to be boring, is it? It's got to be interesting. I mean, the Russian Grand Prix was interesting this year, for crying out loud. If Saudi Arabia doesn't deliver, that's just upsetting, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Well, we're going to watch this space. It's coming up thick and fast. Who's going to be the third best team around there? Do you think it'll be Ferrari, potentially McLaren with the highest speed nature? Who do you see up there?
Should be a strong one for McLaren with the high speed, but I'm pretty sure McLaren have said somewhere that they think Ferrari are going to be faster. We will see. I think if the last few races are anything to go by, you'd expect it to be Ferrari, but we will see. We'll see if our friend Daniel Ricciardo can deliver, because he had an absolute shocker this weekend, didn't he? He was nowhere all race. I heard he had to save fuel for most of it, but I don't know how much that was holding him back.
First half of the race, he was told to save fuel even after the first couple of laps. And then at the end, they just said, go for it. So he was just like, they think the strategist maybe got it wrong, something wrong in the matrix in terms of the system, the strategy there. But they're going to take a long, hard look at themselves with that one. But Abu Dhabi as well. We've seen some images today, Matt, of the new layouts. I'm a fan of the first sector, but not going into the end of sector 2. I think that one will maybe rob us of some racecraft. How do you think your 90-degree circuit will play out this year for the finale?
Still got an ample amount of 90-degree corners, which is just absolutely lovely. Yeah, we've seen now the chicane gone, and I'm so happy about that. I would like to have seen that hairpin at the top of the circuit, a little bit tighter. If I'm honest, that could have been a potential overtaking spot, and I'm sure someone might send one there, but it would have been nice to see that bit tighter. Yeah, I'm not sure on, like you say, the one at the end of the second of the two back straights. I think it's just we've potentially lost an overtaking opportunity there. I don't want to judge it before we've actually seen racing there, but yeah, we will see. And then of course the reprofiled final sector, which should just hopefully allow the cars to follow a little bit closer through those final few 90-degree corners of the Abu Dhabi circuit.
Yeah, I think that final hairpin, it robs us of the fact that if the other guy gets it slightly wrong on the brakes, whereas before he'd hop across the curbs and struggle through there, now he's just going to take a bit of a wider line and get out the corner, with a get out of jail free card, to be honest. But until we get there, who knows? Who's going to take the championship, Matt, and how's it going to play out? Tell me.
Wow, that's a big question. I'm going to say Hamilton's going to take the championship. He's going to win the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix, close the gap down to 1 point going to the last race. I'm going to forget about the fastest lap because that's just a bit unpredictable. He's going to be 1 point behind going into the last race. They're going to hype it all up. And, it's this big dramatic finale. And then I think it'll be Hamilton will take pole and he'll win the race from there. I think Mercedes have got an advantage. So unless Red Bull pulls something out the bag, I think it's all Lewis's to lose. What about yourself? How do you see rounds 21 and 22 playing out?
I think Mercedes will be on top in the next two rounds. I'm just concerned about any protest or any new technical regulations coming out that could really hamper Mercedes. They do have a new power unit in the back. Lewis is going to pretty much have to play this one by himself. I can't see Valtteri Bottas getting involved. Sergio Perez is going to really cause Lewis some problems in these final two rounds. I think Lewis will do it in Jeddah, like you say. But that is just, my heart talking and not my head. My head says this is going to be an absolute chaotic final few races. It's going to come down to the wire. Let's just hope it's not reliability or any incidents on the track and that it is a straight fight towards the end. Whatever the weather, this is going to go down as one of the most iconic championships in our living memory, Matt. And we're blessed to be, at an age where we can really enjoy this. And, we might not see this kind of battle for many years. Someone could come out the blocks next season with an absolute monster of a package. Who knows? But let's enjoy the final few rounds. I'm going to be biting my nails, pulling my hair out, and absolutely shouting to the gills.
Yeah, it will be tense right down to the wire. I hope reliability doesn't come into it. We haven't seen any reliability, I think, between the two championship protagonists this season. Well, not car reliability. We have seen some
reliability.
We've seen some driver reliability. We've seen some Pirelli reliability.
Yeah.
We've seen some Bottas. Hungary, forgetting about the brake pedal, but yeah, it will go down to the wire. I'm sure of that. I mean, Verstappen, he can win the championship this week, this coming race. We haven't spoken about it, but it is possible. If Hamilton has an absolute mare, I think Verstappen has to finish top two, and I think Lewis has to be a bit down the order for it to happen. But it is possible.
Yeah, so these are your kind of stats you always pull out of the bag. So you're quite right. If Max finishes first with the fastest lap in the next round, Lewis finishes sixth or lower, Max takes the championship. Lewis can't do enough. If Max finishes first without the fastest lap, Lewis has to finish seventh or lower for Max to claim it. If Max finishes second with the fastest lap and Lewis finishes 10th or lower, he will take it. And if he finishes second and Lewis has a DNF, then it is going to Red Bull and back to Holland this year. So that was scary when I looked at that today, Matt. That put a sense of doubt in my mind. But we're going to roll the champ on. I'm going to roll the champ on. I know you're going to pray that Max Verstappen wins this, or maybe a Charles Leclerc or Sebastian Vettel wins in Jeddah. But I don't think that is going to be happening anytime soon. Let's hope they go toe-to-toe. They really get the fisticuffs out, but they keep it as clean as possible, and we get some epic racing. You got anything you want to add towards the end of this podcast, mate?
Yeah, let's just hope they don't crash into each other, because I can so easily see that happening at the final race. I think we're going to need to see a nice driver's briefing before Abu Dhabi. Take the two title protagonists into a room and just sort of sit them down and tell them, we are not afraid to disqualify you from the standings if we have to. Do not get stupid with it in this final race.
Yeah, the things I'd love to see on the off season or even prior to these final races. I watch a lot of boxing. We have the gloves are off. They're getting around the round table, a real intense stare down before the final fight in these rounds, and it's going to be fighting talk. I'd like to see as well post season, Karen and Toto get in a ring for charity and go at it toe to toe with the gloves on. They can have head guards if they want, but you would pay to see that pay-per-view. I know I would.
I would.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, if you fancy getting involved with the podcast, let us know. I know Vito's expressed some interest, so we might get the OG on for the next episode or so as a special appearance. If you want to get involved, let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the next round. Enjoy a week off. I mean, I can't wait. I can't wait, Matt.
No, me neither. I just want to get racing once again. It's the final weekend we've got until season's end where there's no racing. We'll be back after Saudi Arabia, the double header to round out the season. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Rich, and I will see you next time, maybe with Vito. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching the Talking Twats podcast. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Ciao.